Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. Picture this. A fancy gala in Atlanta, champagne flowing, everybody smiling, until one slap changes it all. Maggie Harper's got a secret. Her husband Travis is a king with a dark side, and their little boy Ethan. He's caught in the crossfire. What happens when a mama bear fights back against a monster in a suit? Y'all better buckle up. This ain't no fairy tale, and the truth's gonna sting. Hit play, and let's find out. The ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton in downtown Atlanta shimmered like a scene out of a southern fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers dangled from the high ceiling, casting golden light across the crowd of Atlanta's elite. Men in tailored tuxedos, women in gowns that cost more than most folks' rent. The air smelled of expensive perfume and bourbon, the kind you sip slow on a porch at dusk. Clinking glasses and soft jazz from a live band filled the space, blending with the hum of polite laughter. It was the annual Harper Foundation Gala, a night where the city's richest pretended to care about the poor while sipping champagne that could have fed a family for a month. Maggie Harper stood near the edge of the room, her navy blue dress hugging her frame just right, the kind of elegance she'd spent hours perfecting in front of the mirror. Her auburn hair was swept up in a loose bun, a few strands brushing her neck like whispers of rebellion against the polished facade she wore. She clutched a glass of white wine she hadn't touched, her hazel eyes darting around the room. To everyone else, she was the perfect wife, graceful, quiet, the arm candy of Travis Harper, Atlanta's real estate kingpin. But inside, her stomach churned like a storm rolling off the Georgia coast. Travis was across the room, working the crowd like he owned it, which wasn't far from the truth. His dark hair was slicked back, his charcoal suit crisp as $100 bill. He flashed that $1 million smile, the one that had landed him on the cover of Atlanta Business Monthly twice, shaking hands with a state senator, laughing at some joke that wasn't funny. Maggie watched him, her chest tight. She knew that smile. It was the same one he'd worn 10 years ago when he'd promised her the world, back when she still believed in him. "Mommy, can I have more cake?" A small voice piped up beside her. Maggie glanced down at Ethan, her 7-year-old son, his brown curls a mess from tugging at his bow tie all night. He held a half-eaten slice of chocolate cake, crumbs dusting his navy blazer. Those big green eyes, her eyes, looked up at her, innocent as a summer morning. He was the only good thing left in her life, the only reason she still stood here playing this game. "Sure, baby," she said, forcing a smile. "Just don't tell Dad, okay? He'll say it's too much sugar." Ethan grinned, a little conspirator, and scampered off toward the dessert table. Maggie's gaze followed him, her heart aching. He didn't know yet, not really, how the cracks in their family had widened into canyons. But he felt it. She saw it in the way he'd started asking questions, the way he'd flinch when Travis raised his voice at home. She took a shallow breath, smoothing her dress, when Travis's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. "Maggie, darling, come over here," he called, waving her over with that commanding flick of his wrist she'd grown to hate. "Senator Grayson wants to meet the woman behind the man." The crowd parted as she walked toward him, her heels clicking on the polished hardwood floor. Every step felt heavier, like she was wading through mud. She plastered on her practice smile, the one she'd worn for years at these events, and slid her arm through Travis's. He squeezed it a little too tight, a warning wrapped in affection. "Pleasure to meet you, Senator," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Hope you're enjoying the night." Senator Grayson, a gray-haired man with a belly that strained his cummerbund, chuckled. "Oh, I am, Mrs. Harper. Your husband's outdone himself with this shindig. Y'all make quite the pair." Maggie nodded, her lips tight. "Thank you, sir." Travis's hand slid to her lower back, his fingers digging in just enough to make her stiffen. "Maggie's my rock," he said, his tone smooth as honey. "Couldn't do it without her." The senator beamed, oblivious to the tension radiating off her. Maggie glanced at Travis, catching the glint in his blue eyes, a look that said, "Keep smiling, or else." She'd seen it too many times behind closed doors. When the charm faded and the real Travis emerged, she opened her mouth to say something polite, but then it happened. "Mom!" Ethan's voice rang out, sharp and panicked from across the room. Maggie turned just in time to see him trip, his cake tumbling to the floor with a splat. A few guests gasped, others laughed, but Ethan's wide eyes locked on hers, pleading for rescue. "Excuse me," she murmured, pulling away from Travis to rush toward her son. She knelt beside him, brushing crumbs off his jacket. "You okay, buddy?" "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered, his lip trembling. "I didn't mean to." "It's fine, Ethan. It's just cake," she said, cupping his face. Her voice was gentle, a shield against the embarrassment she knew he felt. But then Travis was there, looming over them like a thundercloud. "Get up, Maggie," he snapped, his voice low but edged with venom. "You're making us look like fools." She stood slowly, keeping Ethan behind her. "He's 7, Travis. It's not a big deal." His jaw tightened, that smile gone now, replaced by a scowl he usually saved for their Buckhead mansion. "Everything's a big deal when it's my name on the line," he hissed. "You should know that by now." Maggie's pulse quickened. She'd heard this tone before. Too many nights of him tearing her down over nothing, his temper flaring like a match to gasoline. But they weren't home. They were in public, surrounded by Atlanta's power players. Surely he wouldn't. The crack of his hand against her cheek echoed through the ballroom. Time froze. The jazz band faltered, a saxophone squealing to a stop. Glasses stopped clinking. The chatter died like someone flipped a switch. Maggie's head snapped to the side, her cheek stinging hot and sharp, a red mark blooming under her makeup. Her wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor, the sound slicing through the silence. Ethan let out a choked sob, clinging to her leg. "Mommy!" Maggie's vision blurred, not from tears, but from shock. She touched her face, fingers trembling, and looked up at Travis. His face was a mask of rage, but for a split second, she saw panic flicker in his eyes. He'd lost control, and he knew it. "Smile, Maggie," he whispered through gritted teeth, stepping closer. "Don't make a scene." "You just did that for me," she said, her voice shaking but defiant, louder than she meant it to be. The crowd erupted into murmurs. A woman in pearls clutched her necklace, whispering to her husband. A waiter froze mid-step, tray wobbling. And then Hank Caldwell, a broad-shouldered real estate mogul with a graying mustache, pushed through the throng, his face thunderous. "Travis, what the hell was that?" Hank barked, his southern drawl thick with disbelief. "You don't raise a hand to a lady, your wife no less, in front of God and everybody." Travis straightened, smoothing his jacket like nothing happened. "Just a misunderstanding, Hank. Family stuff, you know how it is." "Bullshit," Hank snapped. "I think you'd better step outside, son. Cool off before you dig yourself a deeper hole." Travis's smile returned, tight and fake. "Appreciate the concern, but we're fine." He grabbed Maggie's arm, pulling her toward him. "Right, darlin'?" She yanked free, her cheek still burning, and scooped Ethan into her arms. His small hands gripped her neck, his breath hitching. "We're leaving," she said, loud enough for the room to hear. She didn't look back as she strode toward the exit, Ethan's weight grounding her, the whispers of the crowd buzzing in her ears like flies. Outside, the humid Atlanta night hit her like a wall. She set Ethan down beside their black SUV, parked under the hotel's glowing marquee. The city lights stretched out before them, Peachtree Street alive with honking cars and neon signs. She slid into the driver's seat, Ethan buckling himself in beside her, his little face pale. "Mom, why did Dad do that?" he asked, his voice so small it broke her. Maggie gripped the steering wheel, staring at the skyline. She didn't have an answer, not one she could give a 7-year-old. Instead, she reached over, squeezing his hand. "We're gonna be okay, buddy," she lied, her voice steady even as her heart raced. As she pulled out of the lot, the rearview mirror caught a glimpse of Travis stepping outside, his silhouette dark against the hotel's glow. He watched them go, his hands in his pockets, and Maggie knew one thing for damn sure. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Hey, y'all. If you're hooked on Maggie's fight, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What would you do in her shoes? Let's keep this story rolling. The week after the gala felt like a slow bleed. Maggie sat on the plush leather couch in their Buckhead mansion, the kind of place that screamed money. High ceilings, marble floors, a chandelier that looked like it belonged in a museum. But to her, it was a cage with better lighting. The TV blared in front of her, tuned to Channel 11 News, where Travis stood at a podium in a crisp navy suit, his hair perfect, his voice smooth as a used car salesman's pitch. Reporters crowded around him outside his downtown office, microphones shoved in his face. "Last Saturday was a misunderstanding," he said, that damn smile plastered on like it was glued there. "Maggie had a little too much wine, got emotional. You know how it goes with family stuff. I'd never hurt her. She's my world." Maggie's grip tightened on the remote, her knuckles whitening. The lie slid white-hot anger burned in her chest. He turned it around, made her the drunk, the drama queen, while he played the saint. She wanted to scream, to throw the remote through the flat screen, but she didn't. Not with Ethan curled up beside her, his head resting on her lap, a toy truck clutched in his small hands. The living room smelled of lemon polish and the faint musk of Travis's cologne. Lingering from when he'd stormed out that morning, Ethan's soft breathing was the only sound breaking the silence, his brown curls spilling over her thigh. She brushed a hand through his hair, her heart twisting. He'd been quieter since the gala, his usual chatter replaced by long stares out the window or doodles of houses without a dad in them. "Mom, is Dad mad at you 'cause I did something wrong?" he asked suddenly, his voice small, his green eyes flicking up to hers. Maggie's breath caught. She forced a smile, the kind she'd perfected over years of pretending everything was fine. "No, baby, it's not you. Never you," she said, pulling him closer. "Your dad's just got a lot on his mind." Ethan nodded, but the worry didn't leave his face. He rolled the truck back and forth on her leg, the tiny wheels digging into her jeans. "He didn't used to yell so much," he mumbled. She swallowed hard, the truth clawing at her throat. No, he didn't. Not when Ethan was too little to notice, not when she could still convince herself it was just stress, just the pressure of building his empire. But now Ethan saw it all, and it was tearing her apart. The TV cut to a reporter, a blonde with too much hairspray, nodding along to Travis's bullshit. "Mr. Harper assures us this was a private matter, and he's focused on moving forward with his family and his business," she chirped. Maggie clicked it off, the silence hitting like a slap. She couldn't do this anymore. Couldn't sit here, trapped in this house, letting Travis rewrite their story while she faded into the background. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, lighting up with a name she hadn't seen in years. Tessa Monroe. Maggie hesitated, then answered. "Hey, Tess," she said, her voice rougher than she meant it to be. "Mags! Oh my God! I saw the news!" Tessa's voice burst through, fast and fierce, the way it always was. "What the hell is he pulling? I'd have decked him right there in that fancy-ass ballroom." Maggie let out a shaky laugh, the first real one in days. Tessa had been her college roommate at UGA, a firecracker with a big mouth and a bigger heart. Travis had hated her, called her a bad influence, and over time, Maggie had let the friendship slip away. Hearing her now felt like a lifeline. He's got everyone eating out of his hand, Maggie said, glancing at the dark TV screen. I don't know how to fight this, Tess. You don't let him spin it, that's how, Tessa shot back. I run a women's group now, Midtown, every Thursday. We help folks like you, Mags. Lawyers, counselors, the works. Come tomorrow night. You don't have to do this alone. Maggie's throat tightened. Alone was all she'd known for too long. Alone with Travis's rules, his temper, his fists. I don't know if I can, she whispered. You can, Tessa said, softer now. You're tougher than he thinks. Always have been. The call ended, and Maggie sat there, Tessa's words echoing in her head. Ethan shifted, sitting up to look at her. Who was that? He asked. An old friend, she said, ruffling his hair. She's gonna help us, okay? He nodded, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. It was enough. That night, after Ethan was tucked into bed, Maggie stood in their walk-in closet, staring at the rows of designer dresses Travis had bought her. Silk and sequins, trophies of a life she'd never wanted. She grabbed a duffel bag from the top shelf, her hands trembling as she stuffed it with jeans, t-shirts, Ethan's favorite dinosaur pajamas. She paused at a framed photo on the dresser, her and Travis on their honeymoon, smiling on a Savannah beach. She'd been so naive then, so in love. Now, that girl felt like a stranger. She crept into Ethan's room, the glow of his nightlight casting shadows on the walls. Buddy, wake up, she whispered, shaking him gently. We're going on a little trip. He rubbed his eyes, blinking at her. Now? Yeah, now, she said, forcing a grin. It's a secret adventure. He didn't ask more, just grabbed his stuffed T-Rex and shuffled after her. They slipped out the back door, the humid Atlanta night wrapping around them like a blanket. Her old Toyota Camry sat in the garage, a relic from before Travis's money took over their lives. She buckled Ethan in, tossed the bag in the trunk, and slid behind the wheel. The engine sputtered to life, and she pulled out onto the quiet street, the mansion shrinking in the rearview mirror. Her pulse hammered, half expecting Travis to burst out the front door, yelling her name. But he didn't. He was still at some late meeting, probably schmoozing clients over cigars, thinking she'd be there waiting when he got home. Not this time. She drove south, no real plan, just away. The city lights faded into suburbs, then dark highways lined with pines. Ethan dozed off in the back, his soft snores steadying her nerves. She didn't know where they'd end up. Maybe Savannah, maybe farther. But for the first time in years, she felt the tiniest spark of something she'd forgotten. Freedom. Back at the house, Travis rolled in just past midnight, loosening his tie as he stepped into the silent foyer. Maggie? He called, his voice sharp. No answer. He checked the kitchen, the bedroom, then Ethan's room. Empty. His jaw clenched, and he snatched the whiskey decanter from the bar, pouring a glass with a shaking hand. It splashed onto the counter as he slammed it down, the amber liquid pooling like blood. She'll crawl back, he muttered, his voice a growl. They always do. May. But deep down, a cold thread of doubt snaked through him. Maggie wasn't the same woman he'd married, and that scared him more than he'd ever admit. The Coastal Breeze Motel sat off Highway 17, a few miles north of Savannah, its neon sign flickering like a tired heartbeat against the night sky. The place was a relic, peeling paint on the walls, a gravel lot cracked with weeds, the faint hum of cicadas mixing with the whir of an old AC unit in the window. Maggie had pulled in just past 2 a.m., her eyes gritty from driving, her hands still tight on the wheel even after she'd parked. It wasn't much, but it was cheap, and it was far enough from Atlanta to feel like a breather. Inside room 12, the air smelled of damp wood and stale cigarettes, the kind of scent that clung to your clothes. A single bulb buzzed overhead, casting a yellow glow on the faded floral wallpaper. Ethan slept on one of the twin beds, his dinosaur pajamas wrinkled, his T-Rex clutched under his arm. Maggie sat on the edge of the other bed, staring at the duffel bag she'd tossed in the corner. $50 cash, a couple changes of clothes, her old college ID. That was all she had left of her life. No plan, no safety net, just a gnawing certainty that she couldn't go back. She rubbed her temples, the ache behind her eyes pulsing like a drumbeat. The TV flickered on low, some late-night infomercial about miracle mops, but she barely heard it. Her phone sat dark on the nightstand. She turned it off after leaving, terrified Travis could track it. Every creak of the motel floorboards made her jump. Every passing headlight through the thin curtain sent her heart racing. She was free, but she didn't feel it. Not yet. A soft knock at the door jolted her upright. She froze, her breath catching. Ethan stirred, but didn't wake. Another knock, louder this time. Maggie crept to the peephole, her bare feet cold against the worn carpet. A woman stood outside, late 50s, graying hair pulled into a messy bun, a denim jacket slung over her shoulder. She didn't look like trouble, but Maggie's nerves screamed anyway. "Who's there?" Maggie called, her voice a hoarse whisper. "You, Maggie?" The woman replied, her drawl thick as Georgia clay. "I'm Lila. Heard you need a sitter for the little man." Maggie's brow furrowed. She cracked the door an inch, keeping the chain on. "How'd you find me?" Lila shrugged, hands in her pockets. "Word gets around when someone's running from a guy like Travis Harper. Friend of a friend at the gas station saw you pull in. I'm local, used to watch kids for folks in a pinch." Maggie studied her, the lines on Lila's face telling stories of hard years. Something about her eyes, sharp but kind, eased the knot in Maggie's chest. She unhooked the chain and stepped back. "Come in, but keep it quiet. He's sleeping." Lila nodded, stepping inside with a glance at Ethan. "Cute kid. How old?" 7, Maggie said, shutting the door soft as she could. "I don't have much cash, but—" "Don't worry about that yet," Lila cut in, dropping into the room's only chair, a rickety thing with a torn cushion. "You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders. What's the story?" Maggie hesitated, then sank onto the bed. "You said Travis Harper like you know him." Lila's lips pressed into a thin line. "Worked for him, years back. Secretary at his first office downtown. Saw enough to know he's a snake in a suit. Quit when he started screaming at me over a typo in a memo. Guessed you might be tied to him when I heard a lady and a kid bolted from Atlanta in a hurry." Maggie's stomach twisted. "He's my husband," she admitted, the word tasting bitter. "Was, I guess. I left last night." Lila whistled low. "Good for you, bad for him. He won't take that lying down." "I know," Maggie said, her voice dropping. "That's why I'm here. But I don't know how long I can keep running." Lila leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "Listen, I ain't just a sitter. I saw things working for him. Files, deals he didn't want anyone poking into. There's a safe in that old office locked up tight. Bet you anything it's got dirt he'd kill to keep buried." Maggie's pulse quickened. "You think I could use it?" "If you're brave enough to get it," Lila said, her eyes glinting. "But you better move fast. Travis Harper don't let go easy." Before Maggie could reply, her stomach growled loud enough to wake the dead. She hadn't eaten since a gas station Snickers hours ago. "I need to grab some food," she said, glancing at Ethan. "Can you stay with him?" Lila nodded. "Go on. I've got him." Maggie slipped out, driving the half-mile to a 24-hour diner she'd passed on the way in. The place was near empty. Linoleum floors sticky under her sneakers, the smell of burnt coffee and frying bacon thick in the air. She ordered burgers and fries to go, using the last of her cash, but swiped Travis's credit card for a Coke when the cashier wasn't looking. A dumb move. She knew it the second she did it, but exhaustion had dulled her edges. Back at the motel, she split the food with Lila, the two of them eating in silence while Ethan snored. The fries were greasy, the burger cold, but it was the best meal she'd had in days. For a moment, she let herself breathe. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, Travis sat in his office, a glass-walled penthouse overlooking Peachtree Street. The clock read 3 a.m., but sleep wasn't an option. He'd called every contact he had, cops, PIs, even a guy who owed him a favor from a shady land deal. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. Card swipe, Coastal Breeze Motel, Savannah. 3:14 a.m. A slow, cold grin spread across his face. "Gotcha," he muttered, dialing a new number. "Yeah, it's me. Head to Savannah. Bring her back, quietly. And the kid, too." Back at the motel, Maggie jolted awake at 4 a.m. to a heavy knock on the door. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Lila was gone. She'd left a note saying she'd be back at dawn, but Ethan still slept, oblivious. The knocking stopped, then started again, harder. "Mrs. Harper, open up," a man's voice rumbled, low and steady. "We need to talk." Maggie's blood ran cold. She didn't recognize the voice, but she didn't need to. Travis had found her. She stumbled to Ethan, shaking him awake. "Buddy, we gotta hide," she whispered, her voice trembling. His eyes fluttered open, confused. "Mom?" "Shh now," she said, pulling him off the bed and into the tiny closet. She shoved them both inside, yanking the sliding door shut, just as the motel door creaked open. Someone had picked the lock. Heavy boots thudded on the carpet, a shadow moving past the crack in the closet door. Maggie held Ethan tight, his face pressed into her chest, her hand over his mouth to muffle his breathing. The man muttered something under his breath, then stopped. A phone buzzed. "Yeah, boss, they're not here," he said after a pause. "Looks like she bolted again." Maggie's lungs burned, holding her breath until the boots retreated. The door clicked shut, and a car engine roared to life outside. She waited, counting to 100, before easing out of the closet. Ethan clung to her, his eyes wide with fear. "Mommy, who was that?" he whispered. "Someone Daddy sent," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "But we're okay. We're gonna be okay." She grabbed the duffel, her mind racing. Travis was closing in, faster than she'd thought. She couldn't stay here, not tonight, not ever. As she ushered Ethan to the car, the first streaks of dawn painted the sky, and one thing was clear. The hunt was on, and she was the prey. "Y'all, things are heating up. Subscribe and comment. Will Maggie make it out? Don't miss the next twist." The sun was barely up when Maggie pulled into a Waffle House just outside Savannah, the sky still streaked with pink and gray. The diner's yellow sign glowed like a beacon against the early morning haze, promising coffee and a chance to think. She'd driven aimlessly for an hour after the motel scare, her hands shaky on the wheel, Ethan dozing in the back with his T-Rex hugged tight. The coastal breeze was behind them now, but the weight of Travis's reach pressed down harder than ever. Inside, the place buzzed with the clatter of plates and the sizzle of hash browns on the grill. The air smelled of grease and syrup, a comforting mix that reminded Maggie of late-night study sessions back at UGA. She slid into a booth by the window, Ethan scooting in beside her, his eyes still heavy with sleep. The waitress, a wiry woman with a name tag reading Darlene, dropped off menus and a pot of coffee without a word, her sneakers squeaking on the sticky floor. "Mom, "Are we safe now?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above the hum of the jukebox playing some old George Jones tune. Maggie poured coffee into a chipped mug, her hands steadier than she felt. "We're getting there, buddy," she said, brushing his curls back. "Just gotta figure out our next move." He nodded, flipping the menu to the kids section, tracing the picture of a waffle with his finger. She watched him, her chest tight. He was too young for this. Too young to be running. Too young to know his dad wasn't the hero he'd once thought. She had to end this, not just for her, but for him. That's when Jasper Reed walked in. He was hard to miss. Tall and lanky, with a mop of sandy hair under a faded Braves cap, a denim jacket slung over one shoulder. He carried a beat-up notebook and a pen behind his ear, looking more like a grad student than the investigative reporter he was. He scanned the room, his gray eyes landing on Maggie, and headed straight for her booth. "You Maggie Harper?" he asked, sliding in across from her without waiting for an invite. She tensed, pulling Ethan closer. "Who's asking?" "Jasper Reed," he said, tipping his cap slightly. "Folks call me Jazz. I write for the Southern Ledger, independent rag, mostly online. Been tailing your husband for months. Word's out he's got a temper, and after that gala stunt, I figured you might have something I can use." Maggie's jaw tightened. "How'd you find me?" "Small town, big mouths," Jasper said with a half grin. "Lady at the motel, Lila, I think, dropped your name when I asked around. Said you're running from Travis Harper. I'm guessing that ain't the whole story." She studied him, the lines around his eyes suggesting he'd seen more than his 30-something years should have allowed. "What's in it for you?" she asked. "Truth," he said, leaning back, "and maybe a shot at taking down a guy who thinks he's untouchable. Travis has been dodging questions about shady land deals, foreclosures that don't add up, cash flowing where it shouldn't. I've got theories, but no proof. You?" Maggie hesitated, then glanced at Ethan. He was coloring the menu now, oblivious. "Maybe," she said finally. "Lila told me about a safe in his old office, back when he was starting out. She thinks there's dirt in there." Jasper's eyes lit up, sharp and hungry. "Then we're breaking in, darling. Time to hit him where it hurts." "Breaking in?" Maggie echoed, her voice low. "You're crazy." "Probably," he said, scribbling something in his notebook. "But you're desperate and I'm stubborn. Meet me tonight, 10 p.m., Old Harper Realty off 285. Bring Lila if she's game. She knows the layout." Before she could argue, Darlene dropped off their food. Waffles for Ethan, a biscuit and gravy for her. Jasper tipped his cap again and left, whistling as he went. Maggie stared at her plate, the gravy pooling like her thoughts. Breaking into Travis's past? It was reckless, but if Lila was right, it might be her only shot. That night, Maggie left Ethan with Lila at a borrowed trailer on the edge of Savannah, cramped, with a tin roof and a porch sagging under potted plants. Lila agreed to come along, her jaw set, like she'd been waiting for a chance to stick it to Travis. They drove Maggie's Camry back toward Atlanta, the highway lights flashing past like warning signals. Jasper waited at the old office, a squat brick building in a rundown strip mall, its Harper Realty sign half burned out. "Security's light," Jasper said, peering through binoculars from his truck. "One camera, back door's got a cheap lock. We're in and out in 10. Maggie's stomach churned. "And if we get caught?" "We won't," Lila said, pulling a hairpin from her bun. "I've picked worse." The air was thick with humidity as they slipped around back, the buzz of crickets masking their steps. Lila knelt at the door, her hands steady as the lock clicked open. Inside, the office smelled of mildew and dust, papers stacked on a desk long abandoned. Jasper led them to a corner where a rusted safe sat, half hidden behind a filing cabinet. "Cover me," he said, pulling out a stethoscope. Old school, but effective. Maggie kept watch at the window, her pulse hammering, while Lila rummaged through drawers for anything useful. Minutes ticked by, each one stretching like hours, then a soft clunk. "Got it," Jasper whispered, swinging the safe open. Inside were folders, yellowed, stuffed with contracts, bank statements, names Maggie didn't recognize. She grabbed one labeled Offshore Transfers, her hands shaking as she skimmed it. Numbers, dates, proof Travis had been siphoning money from investors. "Holy shit," Jasper muttered, snapping photos with his phone. "This is gold." But then headlights swept across the window. Maggie ducked, her heart in her throat. A black SUV rolled into the lot. Travis's guys. She'd bet her life on it. The camera above the door blinked red. They'd been seen. "Out now," Jasper hissed, shoving the folder into his jacket. They bolted for the back door, Lila tripping over a chair in the dark. Tires crunched gravel outside as the SUV stopped, doors slamming. Maggie's legs burned as they sprinted to the Camry, Jasper yanking the driver's door open. "Go! Go! Go!" Lila yelled, piling into the back. The engine roared to life, and he peeled out, the SUV's headlights flaring in the rearview mirror. "Who the hell are they?" Maggie gasped, clutching the folder. "His muscle," Jasper said, swerving onto the highway. "He knows you're fighting back." The chase stretched for miles, the SUV gaining, its horn blaring like a war cry. Maggie twisted in her seat, watching Ethan's world shrink to this. Running, hiding, fighting a man who'd once tucked him in at night. Her nails dug into her palms, drawing blood. Jasper took a sharp turn onto a side road, tires screeching, and floored it through a maze of back streets. The SUV faltered, then vanished in the distance. He slowed, breathing hard. "Lost him," he said, but his knuckles were white on the wheel. Maggie sank back, the folder heavy in her lap. They'd gotten something, proof Travis wasn't invincible. But at what cost? Her eyes met Lila's in the mirror, both of them silent. The night pressed in around them, dark and endless, and Maggie knew one thing for sure. Travis wouldn't stop until he dragged her back, or buried her. Whoa, that was close. Subscribe now and tell me in the comments, can Maggie stay one step ahead? Keep watching. The Tybee Island breeze carried the sharp tang of salt and seaweed, a lazy Sunday afternoon wrapping the beach in a postcard glow. Seagulls wheeled overhead, their cries piercing the steady crash of waves against the shore. Maggie sat on a driftwood log, her sneakers buried in the sand, watching Ethan chase the tide. His laughter rang out as he darted from the water, his shorts soaked, his T-Rex dangling from one hand. For a fleeting moment it felt normal, like they were just a mom and her kids stealing a day away from the world. But normal was a lie Maggie couldn't afford. It had been 3 days since the break-in at Travis's old office, 3 days of hiding in a borrowed beach cottage Jasper had scrounged up through a friend. The folder from the safe sat locked in the Camry's glove box, its pages burning a hole in her mind, proof of Travis's crimes, but also a target on her back. Jasper was back in Savannah, working contacts to get the story out, while Lila stayed close, babysitting Ethan when Maggie needed air. They were a team now, ragged and desperate, but a team. She tugged her hoodie tighter against the wind, her eyes scanning the horizon. Every shadow felt like Travis, every stranger a threat. The SUV chase had rattled her more than she'd admit. Those headlights in the mirror, the roar of the engine, the certainty that he'd never let her go. She'd stopped using the credit card, stopped calling anyone but Tessa on a burner phone Jasper had given her. But deep down, she knew it wasn't enough. "Mom, look!" Ethan yelled, holding up a seashell, its edges glinting in the sun. "It's got stripes!" She forced a smile, waving him over. That's a beauty, buddy. You're a regular treasure hunter. He plopped down beside her, digging his toes into the sand. Can we stay here forever? He asked, his voice soft, almost hopeful. Maggie's throat tightened. Maybe not forever, she said, brushing sand off his cheek. But for a while, yeah. His green eyes searched hers, too wise for 7. Is Dad still mad? She opened her mouth to lie, to say something soft and safe, but a shadow fell across them. Her head snapped up, and there he was, Travis Harper, standing 10 feet away, his black suit stark against the beach's casual sprawl. No tie, top button undone, but that cold, calculating glint in his blue eyes was sharper than ever. He looked out of place, a predator among flip-flops and sunburns. Ethan stiffened, scooting closer to her. Maggie stood, pulling him behind her, her pulse hammering. "What the hell are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Travis smirked, hands in his pockets. "Nice spot, Maggie. Thought I'd drop by, see how my family's holding up." "Stay back," she snapped, stepping away as he took a step forward. "You got no right coming near us." "No right?" he echoed, his voice low, venomous. "You think you can take my son and ruin me? I'll bury you, Maggie. You and that damn reporter." Her stomach dropped. He knew about Jasper, maybe the break-in too. "You don't scare me anymore," she said, lifting her chin. "I've got proof now. You're done." His laugh was sharp, cutting through the wind. "Proof? Some papers you stole? My lawyers'll shred that, and you, in court. I'm taking Ethan back, and you'll wish you'd never crossed me." Ethan's small hand gripped hers tight, his breath hitching. "Leave her alone, Dad," he shouted, his voice cracking with fear and fury. Travis's eyes flickered to him, a flash of something, guilt maybe crossing his face. But it vanished fast. "This ain't over," he said, pointing at Maggie. "You've got till tomorrow to come home, or I'll drag you back myself." He turned and walked off, his polished shoes kicking up sand, disappearing toward a black sedan parked near the lifeguard tower. Maggie's knees buckled, but she held it together for Ethan, pulling him into a hug. "It's okay, baby," she whispered, her voice shaking. "He's gone." But he wasn't. Not really. Back in Atlanta, Travis didn't waste time. By Monday, his legal team, 3 suits with Ivy League degrees and 0 souls, filed an emergency custody motion, claiming Maggie was unstable, a thief, and a danger to Ethan. Jasper's article hit the Southern Ledger that same day, a bombshell titled "Harper's Empire Built on Sand," laying out the offshore accounts and shady deals. The city buzzed, talk radio dissecting it, Twitter lighting up. But Travis countered hard, painting Maggie as a scorned wife out for revenge. Tessa called that night, her voice tight through the burner. "Mags, he's playing dirty. They're saying you broke into his office, made it all up. Court's set for Friday, 3 days. You gotta fight this." Maggie paced the cottage, its pine walls closing in, the ocean's roar outside mocking her panic. "I don't know if I can win, Tess," she admitted. "He's got money, lawyers, everything." "You've got the truth," Tessa said. "And us. Lila's digging for more. Jasper's pushing the story. We're not letting him take Ethan." Friday came too fast. The Fulton County Courthouse loomed over downtown Atlanta, its granite steps slick with morning dew. Maggie walked in, her navy dress, ironed but borrowed from Tessa, feeling like armor she didn't trust. Ethan stayed with Lila at a safe house Jasper had arranged, his absence a hollow ache in her chest. Inside, the courtroom smelled of polish and old paper, the air thick with tension. Travis sat with his team, his suit pristine, his smirk unshaken. The judge, a gray-haired woman with a no-nonsense frown, peered over her glasses as the hearing began. Travis's lawyer stood first, a slick guy named Preston with a voice like oil. Your Honor, Mrs. Harper has been erratic, fleeing with the child, breaking into private property, fabricating lies to smear my client. Mr. Harper's a respected businessman, a father who's provided everything. We ask for full custody to protect Ethan. Maggie's stomach twisted. She gripped the table, her nails digging into the wood. Tessa, sitting behind her, whispered, "Breathe, Mags. We've got this." Her lawyer, a pro bono guy Tessa had found, young but scrappy, stood next. Your Honor, Travis Harper's the threat here. He assaulted my client in public, harassed her, chased her across state lines. We've got documents, stolen or not, showing he's a crook. Ethan's safety depends on staying with his mother. The judge flipped through Jasper's article, her frown deepening. These are serious claims, she said. But legality matters. How'd you get these, Mrs. Harper? Maggie swallowed, her mouth dry. We found him, Your Honor, in his old office. Preston pounced. She admits it, breaking and entering. She's unstable, unfit. Ethan needs his father. The room spun. Maggie saw Travis lean back, that smirk widening like he'd already won. Her lawyer scrambled, pulling out photos from the gala, her cheek red, Ethan crying, but Preston waved them off. One incident, exaggerated, he sneered. She's alienating the boy from a loving dad. The judge tapped her pen, eyes narrowing. I'll review all evidence. We reconvene Monday for a ruling. Until then, Ethan stays with a court-appointed guardian. Maggie's heart stopped. No, she whispered, then louder. No, please, he needs me. Order, the judge snapped, banging her gavel. This is about the child's welfare, not your feelings. Travis caught her eye as he stood, his grin cold as ice. See you soon, darlin', he mouthed, strolling out with his team. Maggie sank into her chair, Tessa's hand on her shoulder, the only thing keeping her from breaking. The courtroom emptied, leaving her alone with the echo of that gavel. Ethan, her anchor, her reason, was slipping away, and Travis was winning. Everything she'd fought for teetered on the edge, and for the first time, she wondered if she'd lost before she'd even begun. Oh no, is this the end for Maggie? Hit subscribe and drop a comment. Can she turn this around? Don't miss it. The safe house was a clapboard shack on the outskirts of Decatur, just east of Atlanta, a sagging porch, peeling paint, and a yard overgrown with kudzu. Maggie paced the creaky floorboards, the air thick with the smell of damp wood and the faint buzz of a box fan rattling in the window. Ethan was upstairs, tucked into a borrowed bed with Lila watching over him, but Maggie couldn't sit still. It was Sunday night, less than 24 hours until the judge's ruling, and every tick of the clock felt like a hammer on her nerves. She'd barely slept since the hearing. Travis's smirk burned into her mind, his voice echoing. See you soon, darling. The court had taken Ethan to a guardian's home that morning, a social worker with kind eyes but firm rules, and Maggie had only gotten an hour with him, her arms aching from how tight she'd held him. I'll fix this, buddy, she'd whispered, but her voice had cracked, and his small nod had broken her heart. Her burner phone buzzed on the kitchen table, Tessa's name flashing. Maggie snatched it up. Tell me you've got something, she said, her voice raw. Lila's on her way, Tessa replied, breathless. She found gold, Mags. Something big. Hold tight. Maggie's pulse spiked. She'd spent the weekend with Jasper poring over the safe's documents, but Travis's lawyers had twisted everything, called them stolen, unreliable, inadmissible. The article had stirred the pot, but without hard proof tying Travis to the crimes. It was her word against his money. She needed a miracle. Headlights cut through the dusk outside, a beat-up Ford crunching gravel as it pulled up. Lila climbed out, her denim jacket slung over one arm, a manila envelope clutched in her hand. She burst through the door, her gray eyes blazing. "You ain't gonna believe this," Lila said, slapping the envelope on the table. "Found it in my attic. Old tapes from when I worked for Travis. Bastard used to rant into a recorder when he thought no one was listening. I kept 'em. Figured they'd bite him someday." Maggie tore it open, spilling out a cassette tape and a yellowed note in Lila's scrawl. "Harper, 2015. Offshore deal." Her hands shook as she handed it to Jasper, who just walked in, his notebook already out. "Got a player?" he asked, voice tight with excitement. Lila dug into her bag, pulling out a dusty portable cassette deck. She popped the tape in, hit play, and Travis's voice crackled through the static, arrogant, unfiltered, damning. "10 mil wired to the Caymans," he said, the clink of ice in a glass punctuating his words. "Tell Grayson if he asks, it's a loan, off the books. And if that nosy bitch Lila sniffs around, fire her. She's disposable." Maggie's breath caught. Jasper grinned like a kid on Christmas. "Holy hell," he muttered, scribbling notes. "That's Senator Grayson, State Senate. This ties Travis to corruption, not just fraud." Lila smirked. "Told you he'd slip. I recorded him for months. Habit from dealing with liars. There's more where that came from." Maggie's mind raced. "Can we use it? Tomorrow?" "If we get it to the judge, yeah," Jasper said, already dialing. "I've got a friend at the DA's office. Owes me a favor. This'll blow the case wide open." Monday morning, the Fulton County Courthouse buzzed with tension, the air heavy with humidity and anticipation. Maggie sat at the defendant's table, her navy dress wrinkled from a sleepless night, her hands clasped to stop the trembling. Travis lounged across the aisle, his suit pristine, his lawyers whispering strategy. He caught her eye and winked, like this was a game he'd already won. The judge entered, her robe swishing, and called the room to order. "We're here for a final ruling on custody of Ethan Harper," she said, peering at her notes. "Counsel, any last submissions?" Preston stood, smug as ever. "No, Your Honor. We rest on our prior arguments. Mrs. Harper's unfit, a thief, a liar." Maggie's lawyer rose, a nervous kid named Ben with a tie too tight. "We've got new evidence, Your Honor," he said, holding up the tape. "Audio of Mr. Harper admitting to illegal acts, fraud, bribery, coercion. It's his voice, verified by an expert overnight. This man's a danger to his son." The courtroom erupted, gasps, murmurs, Travis's lawyers scrambling. Preston shot up. "Objection, this is last minute, unverified." "Overruled," the judge snapped, taking the tape. She slid it into a player on her bench, and Travis's voice filled the room, cold and clear. His face drained of color, his smirk gone, replaced by a twitch of panic. Lila took the stand next, her denim jacket swapped for a plain blouse, her voice steady. "I worked for him in 2015, she said, meeting the judge's gaze. "He threatened me when I asked about those deals. That tape's real. I recorded it myself. He hit his wife, too. I saw bruises she hid. That ain't the first time." Preston tried to cut in, accusing Lila of bias, but she didn't flinch. "I've got no reason to lie," she said. "I was his friend once, till I saw who he really was." The judge's frown deepened as she turned to Travis. "Mr. Harper, you've got some explaining to do." He stood, fists clenched, his voice tight. "This is a setup, Your Honor. She's—" "Sit down," the judge barked. "I've heard enough." She leaned back, tapping her gavel lightly. "Given this evidence, assault, financial crimes, intimidation, I'm granting full custody to Mrs. Harper. Mr. Harper will have supervised visits pending a criminal investigation. Court's adjourned. The gavel slammed, and Maggie's knees buckled. Tessa caught her, tears streaming down both their faces. Across the room, Travis lunged toward his lawyers, snarling, but two bailiffs grabbed him, his threats swallowed by the chaos. Outside, the Atlanta sun blazed, the city humming, oblivious to her victory. Jasper clapped her shoulder. "Story's live tonight. FBI's already sniffing around. He's toast." Maggie nodded, numb with relief. Travis was arrested 2 days later at Hartsfield-Jackson, caught trying to board a flight to Mexico. The news screamed, "Harper Empire collapses." She watched it on the cottage TV, Ethan asleep beside her, his small hand in hers. Weeks later, Maggie stood on Tybee Island's shore, the same spot where Travis had cornered her. The wind whipped her hair, the waves crashing steady and sure. Ethan skipped stones nearby, his laughter bright against the horizon. They'd moved into a tiny rental in Savannah, a fixer-upper with a porch swing and a yard for him to play. She'd landed a part-time gig at a furniture store, sketching designs on the side, rebuilding slow but steady. A letter had come that morning, Travis's handwriting, postmarked from jail. "I lost myself. Hope you find peace." She'd stared at it, then torn it to pieces, letting the wind carry them into the sea. Forgiveness wasn't hers to give. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But freedom? That was hers now. Hers and Ethan's. "Mom, watch this!" Ethan called, hurling a stone that skipped 3 times before sinking. She grinned, kneeling beside him. "You're getting good, buddy. We're safe now. You know that?" He nodded, his green eyes clear. "Yeah, just us. Just us," she said, pulling him close. The sun dipped low, painting the water gold, and Maggie felt it. Peace, fragile but real. Travis had taken years, but he couldn't take this. She'd fought, she'd won, and she'd learned. Strength wasn't in the money or the mansion. It was in the boy beside her, in the life she'd clawed back from the ashes. What a ride, right? Subscribe and comment. What's your favorite moment? Let's keep telling stories together.